Meditation and spiritual life. Begin your spiritual practices early in life. There are a good many people who think that they can leave religion to their old age after enjoying all the fruits of life, but their time may never come because after dissipating the great part of their energy in physical enjoyment, there will be not much of it left for strenuous spiritual practice. Many people start spiritual life too late to get any great benefit from it. Many people realize too late that their life had been in vain. But they are better than the old fool who still runs after physical enjoyment even in old age, vainly imagining that he is a romantic young man. In the West, you meet so many of these miserable people. One has to begin as early as possible with one's spiritual life. Unless we have sown the seed of spirituality in our soul early in life, there is no possibility of creating a spiritual attitude in later life. Sri Ramakrishna one day warned his beloved young disciple Narendra about associating himself with Girish, the famous actor-dramatist of Bengal. He said, "Do you visit Girish frequently? No matter how much one washes a cup that has contained a solution of garlic, still a trace of the smell will certainly linger. The youngsters who come here are pure souls, untouched by lust and gold. Men who have associated a long time with lust and gold smell of garlic, as it were. They're like a mango pecked by crows. Such a fruit cannot be offered to the deity in the temple, and you would hesitate to eat it yourself. Again, take the case of a new pot and another in which the curd has been made. One is afraid to keep milk in the second pot, for the milk very often turns sour." Girish later, on hearing about this talk, asked Sri Ramakrishna whether the smell of garlic would go. The master replied that the smell of garlic would go if the cup was heated in the blazing fire. Once a person has become a slave to his instincts, he finds it too difficult to free himself from the clutches. Old age is too short to achieve this freedom from instincts. If your ideal is freedom from bondage and sorrow by the attainment of superconscious experience, you had better start now. And suppose one dies before attaining one's goal. Remember the passage in the Gita that even a little bit of this discipline saves one from the great fear. Swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Those who have seriously struggled in spiritual life, those who have surrendered their all to the divine, need not have any fear. There are other planes of existence where they can continue their spiritual quest. If they have lived an intensely spiritual life while alive, then one would follow the same course where one left off. Death brings about a change of environment, but the focus of our consciousness, the divine, is always with us. Wherever we are, the infinite is always with us. When we get this idea, we lose all fear of death. We should court neither life nor death. Let destiny run its course, but let us fix our heart forever on the divine. Let us march on fearlessly, resolutely towards the goal. Until you fall asleep, until you die, always be busy with yourself and with Vedantic thoughts running in the mind. Next, the ideal of superconscious experience. Why do we need spiritual experience? When we look deeply within, we are surprised to find that we are greatly dissatisfied with ourselves, with the world we live in, and the persons we associate with. This dissatisfaction creates conflict and tension which seems to be increasing in our contemporary world. Abnormal conflicts and tensions make the mind and body ill. Whatever its cause, dissatisfaction with the pattern of one's outer life produces conflict and consequent illness of body and mind. Our lives are then seen to be useless and without a goal. Moreover, when we feel dissatisfied with ourselves, we tend to create restlessness instead of peace in others. As in the case with physical illness, mental illness can also be infectious. We may have got the right work, but perhaps we are bringing the wrong spirit to bear upon it. In that case, we should develop a new attitude towards our job. Or perhaps we are doing something that fails to use our particular talents. Then we feel frustrated, and frustration causes strange and often harmful behavior. Perhaps we lean too much on others, or we may imagine hostility around us and waste our energies fighting imaginary enemies. Or perhaps we isolate ourselves from others, build up an idealized image of ourselves, and live in a fool's paradise. The worst symptom of mental illness comes when we begin to hate ourselves, and then life becomes doubly miserable. What is the remedy? What can we do about all this? The wise psychologist tells us that before we can find an ideal for which to live effectively, we must have a deep understanding of our own nature. By changing our opinion of ourselves, we can change ourselves, and this new attitude necessarily precedes the finding of a proper outlet for our energies. How to change our opinion about ourselves? The psychologist says that this can be done through psychoanalysis. We must allow ourselves to be examined by a psychologist. He tries to sound the depths of our personality through intelligent questions, unearths our hidden complexes, and tells us what actually is wrong with us. Theoretically, this method appears to be all right, and many people have really got some benefit from psychoanalysis. But its limitation lies in the fact that psychologist's knowledge of others depends on his own knowledge of himself, which is usually shallow. Western psychologists, with all their research, have not succeeded in understanding man in depth. They have no doubt discovered that the conscious mind of man is under the control of a vast unconscious mind, and that the conscious and the unconscious minds are often incompatible in their movements. The conscious mind may have higher aspirations, but the unconscious mind may be full of baser passions. Unconscious motivations work against conscious actions and thinking. But what Western psychology has failed to achieve is to discover a satisfactory means of integrating the unconscious and the conscious minds of man. What most psychologists ask their patients to do is to yield to the demands of the unconscious. In some cases, they may release the inner tension, but this may not be permanent and may even be harmful. It is here that the Hindu yoga steps in. Yoga begins with purifying the unconscious first and making it compatible with the conscious. This purification is not something artificial. Purity is our real nature. It is the true nature of the self of man. Hinduism long ago discovered a higher dimension to the personality of man, that is, the superconscious. It is the superconscious that gives us knowledge, and it is also that gives us understanding of our higher self. It reflects the light of the self. This light must be brought to bear on the dark unconscious chambers of the mind. Then the unconscious is purified. It cooperates with the conscious mind and its aspirations. Inner division, conflicts and tensions then vanish. So the discovery of the superconscious is the most important point in the attainment of inner peace and harmony. The discovery of the superconscious is the first spiritual experience. It is that which integrates the conscious with the unconscious. We regain our whole personality, our whole self. Spiritual experience not only brings us the knowledge of the superconscious, but also solves the problem of the unconscious mind. Some of our problems are due to complexes hidden in the unconscious. Sex may be the cause of conflicts in many people, especially early in their youth. But it is certainly wrong to exaggerate its role in man's life out of all proportion, as Freud did. The aggressive tendency in man to dominate others may be the cause of conflicts in some people. But it is certainly wrong to exaggerate its role and make it responsible for all the ills of man, as Dr. Adler has done in his school of psychology. In the course of my long stay in the so-called materialistic West, I came across a number of people who were spiritually hungry. Their problems were mostly of a spiritual nature. Many of them were dissatisfied with the joys of ordinary life and even the conventional ways of institutional religion. They were seeking higher experience, a higher existence. The psychologist Dr. Carl Jung was one of the earliest to understand the spiritual need of man. He has pointed out that modern man is in search of his soul, but it is clear from his writings that Dr. Jung himself did not seem to have found out his true self. I met him in Switzerland and presented him some of my books. He spoke to me about the unconscious. He said that the superconsciousness of the Hindus was included in the unconscious. That is a strange doctrine. It is actually just the other way around. We generally think that the body is the outermost, mind is the inner one, and the soul is the innermost layer. We have to reverse the order. The Atman or self is the infinite, all-pervading consciousness. The mind is contained within it. Still inner is the physical body, which is limited and is the least pervasive. The superconscious is at present unknown to us, but that does not mean that it is the same as the unconscious mind of the psychologists. It can be attained through spiritual disciplines. It is a source of supreme peace and bliss. More than all, it gives man the feeling of wholeness, the feeling of supreme fulfillment. Dr. Jung is famous for his classification of human types into extroverts and introverts. The introvert is given to brooding and self-criticism, lives largely in a subjective world within his own mind. The extrovert is the outgoing, busies himself with the outside world of affairs. His reality is the objective world of action. These types are not mutually exclusive. We can find them both in ourselves. In Vedanta, we speak of the karma yogi, the bhakta, and the jnani. But these are not like watertight compartments. In every one of us, some elements of all these types are present. We must try to bring about proper harmony between the different tendencies. Through training, we can combine and integrate the various tendencies within our nature and finally even transcend them all. Thus, we can work with enthusiasm, have intense devotion to a higher ideal, and also be rational in our thinking and work. But for this, there must be intense spiritual aspiration as the uniting force. In a book called Release from Nervous Tension, the author, Dr. Fink, gives a positive suggestion for the practice of relaxation. First, he says, learn to relax the head and neck, then knees and legs, chest, arms, eyelids, and so on throughout the body. Such piecemeal release of tension, if properly practiced, has certainly a beneficial effect. But our teachers tell us that through self-analysis and meditation, we can learn to get control of our entire personality. This is far more effective and lasting means of removing tension than the effort to relax our members one at a time. Why should we liberate ourselves painfully limb by limb when by proper training we can take hold of the mind and attain spiritual experience that will release us all at once? I am reminded of the story of a miser. He was on the deathbed and the priest came to save him. Being greedy, the priest decided to save him limb by limb and charged a certain fee for every part saved. When he finally came to the right leg, the priest thought, now I'm going to charge him a lot as he is escaping us. So he said aloud to the miser, now I'm going to ask a large sum for your right leg. The dying man, who had a very calculating mind, summoned all his strength and said, "But Father, that is a wooden leg." Whatever theologians may say about saving a man limb by limb, real spiritual teachers have a more effective means of salvation. This is the ideal of liberation and of the self through direct perception of the higher self. Spiritual experience transforms the whole personality. Intense peace and bliss fill the soul and bring about complete relaxation of body and mind.